Welcome to sunny Sanibel Island, Florida, home of the rich and famous, or at least the rich. Heading across the causeway to Sanibel Island. Nikola Tesla. What made Nikola Tesla upset in his later years? The one thing that pissed him off most, and he was the most gentle creature in the world, never harmed a soul, is relativity. The convictions and the nonsense of relativity and the emerging quantum mechanics, as Einstein and his deranged henchmen came up with wave-particle duality nonsense. This was a heresy both to Nikola Tesla and to others that had wisdom. Nikola Tesla often referred to Einstein as a long-haired, long fuzzy-haired crank, and he said, let Einstein's followers believe and wish as they will, that his followers were stronger of mind, and he was true. The one thing he railed against, and the one thing that we know that Tesla had at least 2 gigantic trunks of papers. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but there is an absolute fact that the government admits to having 2 gigantic trunks of Nikola Tesla's full of his notes and papers, and one of the last things that Nikola Tesla was working on was his unified field theory to disprove relativity. It was basically going to be a grand unified theory of everything as far as the fields. Now, I figured out what he was working on, and obviously I don't have insight into what sort of equations he may or may not have developed, but the government admits to having these notes. But the important thing that Tesla was interested in was disproving the quantification, the reification of posterior attributes. Now, what are posterior attributes? Well, one of the fundamental heresies and founding principles of quantum mechanics and relativity is the reification of measures as being things that acted on things, referring specifically to space and time. Neither space nor time are things that act on anything. It's absurd as saying that you have 2 large bodies and you have a ruler in between them, and that this ruler is what causes bodies to behave and codependently interact with each other, either accelerate or that there's actually a warpage of space. Space is not, this is something that Tesla railed against endlessly. Space is literally a privation. Analogously, to keep it really simple without getting into the minutiae, is that analogously space is no different than a shadow, like the car ahead of me, shadow. Well, you can obviously sit behind, a foolish person can sit within a shadow and say that he feels cold because there's a privation of light, and that this privation of light makes him cold and drops his core temperature, and therefore a shadow does something. It is something that does something, that acts upon something. But this is not true. You cannot reify a privation as something that is a principle. It is not a principle. It is not a principle that acts on anything. Superficially so, subjectively so, one would think, and this is where humans haven't yet evolved, and where people like Tesla and others were more evolved in thinking, is they understood that space was literally absence of inertia. Space itself is not warped. Dielectric acceleration is impelled by counterspace. Tesla had his own verbiage for this. Others have their own verbiage for this. Eric Dollard refers it to counterspace, but he actually got that from a person prior to him. Wrote several books on counterspace. There have been a few books written about counterspace, but the notion that space and time are curved or warped, these are nothing other than magnitudinal measures of movements. Space and time do not exist as principles. They are not things that act on other things. In this, Tesla and his cohorts and those after him were correct. Space is not something that can act on anything. Superficially so, just like the shadow, we might think that space is something that acts on something, but that can never be the case. This is why, this is, one of the most gentle man, and certainly the most intelligent man who ever lived. The one thing that pissed him off and got his dander worked up to whatever small extent it can be said that he was, is that We always got this stopway here on Sanibel Island. I would always wonder what would happen if they actually put a light here. That Tesla railed against Einstein's relativity, and especially the quantization of light as something as both wave and particle. The basis of quantum is atomism, that the entire universe is nothing other than a gigantic ball of finer and finer beads that interact with each other. Now, modern physics, any branch thereof, has never, nor quantum, nor Einstein, has ever defined instantaneous action at a distance. Specifically, it has never defined what a field is, because if everything in the universe is a field, and fields are not particles. Fields are particle-free. And knowing this fact, this is the great, gigantic, 800-pound elephant that has its ass firmly squatted upon the heads of modern-day physics, so to say, and modern-day quantum mechanics and quantum physics. Quantum, of course, means quantize, literally quantity. It is literally nothing other than ancient Greek atomism rehashed. Since everything in the universe is fields, and fields are not particles, and of course reification of posterior attributes as attributional measures between magnitudes, specifically referring to space and time as something that can be warped, is ridiculous as saying that what causes two magnets to jump towards each other would be microscopic unicorns or leprechauns. This, of course, is an absurdity, but you know, taken in its current context, the quantization of space and time and that of acceleration by large masses from gravitational acceleration, which is no different than magnetic acceleration. Magnetic acceleration or attraction is nothing other than coherent gravity. Gravity is nothing other than dielectric acceleration towards a smaller and smaller space. It's the same reason why you can take a wafer-thin magnet, neodymium magnet, and if you smash it with a hammer enough times, it will make a sphere. It will always make up the smallest volume possible. It is an acceleration towards counterspace. Now it will be a jagged little sphere, but if you can take a flat magnet and smash it, it will always form the smallest spatial volume possible. This is an irrefutable fact. That which we call gravitation is nothing other than dielectric acceleration, and that which we call magnetic acceleration is no different than gravity, except it is more powerful. But the only reason it's more powerful is the same reason that a laser at 5 watts is far more powerful than a light bulb at 5 watts. And that difference, that differentiation, is one word, and one word only. And if you understand this, you'll understand much of the universe. And that word is coherency. Incoherent versus coherent. If you don't know what those words are, you should look them up. Okay, what differentiates out a laser from a light bulb at 5 watts is the same thing that differentiates out magnetism from gravity. We have coherent versus incoherent acceleration. Both are one and exactly the same thing. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. The Europeans love to come down here. They ought to call this Kleine Deutschland.